Hey guys, welcome back to the Prosta English podcast. If you are new here, my name is Nika and I'm your host, and this podcast is created for English learners. Here we talk about life, discuss some interesting, important, and thought-provoking topics. I recommend listening to this podcast while you cook, clean your home, walk your dog, get to work, or do sports. And I hope that with the help of this podcast, you will develop the habit of listening to audios in English and you will also boost your listening skills. Thank you so much for selecting this podcast, and let's get started. Those of you who follow me on Instagram know that I recently took a trip to London. So, in this episode, I'll tell you more about my travel experience and the things which impressed me and shocked me. But first, I'd like to explain to you why I've selected the UK as my travel destination. 4 years ago, my cousin and her husband relocated to London because he had found a job, and since then, I'd been dreaming of going to London and staying there for some time. However, initially the COVID-19 started, and then my husband and I moved to Poland, and for a long time we didn't have any proper documents. So only at the end of last year, I finally got a chance to apply for a British visa. In Gdańsk, we don't have any British visa centers, so I had to travel to Warsaw with all my documents, and I submitted my passport, and it took me I think a month to get the visa. So it was rather fast because I had heard different stories from people who were waiting for 3 or 5 months. So I think I was really lucky. And after I got the visa, we immediately bought the tickets. And I was shocked that plane tickets to London from Gdańsk were so cheap. If I'm not mistaken, we paid around 250 euros for round trip tickets for two people with one luggage. And actually, there were even cheaper options available if we had selected different days. The first day when we arrived in London, it was raining heavily, and I believe I could use here a British idiom, it was raining cats and dogs. But despite the weather, I was smiling all the time because I was so happy to be there, to be in the UK, and to see this wonderful country. Of course, the first thing that I noticed was the buses, red double-decker buses that I had seen in pictures so many times. And the second thing that impressed me was the architecture. 2, 3, 4 floor houses in British style with beautiful doors and nice tiny gardens next to them. And the third noteworthy point is that cars drive on the left side of the road. And every time you cross the road, you need to be very careful because you should first look right, which is extremely unusual, I would say. And London is a highly international city full of tourists from different countries. And I believe that in most of those countries, cars drive on the right side of the road. So to prevent accidents, on every crosswalk in big white letters, it's written for pedestrians where to look when they cross the road, which is rather helpful and convenient, especially the first few days. But a funny observation for me was that not only cars drive on the left side, but also people walk on the left side. And I remember that in some public places, people were constantly bumping into each other because they were literally confused where to walk. So, on the first day, when we arrived and it was raining, my cousin recommended that we go to some museums. Actually, my husband and I are not huge fans of museums, but we had no choice because it was very unpleasant to stay outside. So, we went to the National History Museum and the Museum of Science. But to be honest, I was really shocked because those museums were huge, really very interesting, and they were also free of charge. So now I think that if I travel to London next time, I will definitely explore some museums and I will add them to my travel bucket list. In the evening of the same day, we went with my cousin and her husband to a pub to drink local beer. And it was interesting to notice that British people in public places usually have very good manners. They are very quiet and polite, but in pubs, they speak and laugh very, very loudly. So it means that for them, pubs are the places where they relax properly. For the next 4 days, we explored the city, and of course, we first visited the main sites such as Big Ben, Tower Bridge, Buckingham Palace, Trafalgar Square, the London Eye, and many other places known from school days and English lessons. I was actually in London 5 years ago, but at that time I didn't see Big Ben because it was being reconstructed. And this time, when I saw it, I couldn't believe that it was real and that I was seeing it with my own eyes because I had seen it so many times in pictures that even in reality, it seemed to me that I was just looking at some kind of wallpaper. In addition to the old part of the city, we also visited some new modern districts with lots of skyscrapers. And our friends told us that during the pandemic and for some months after, all those gigantic office buildings were empty because people didn't want to return to the offices as they got used to working remotely. But now, all those people who work in those buildings, they have to go to their offices at least a couple of times a week. So, yeah, on the one hand, you work in a modern district of London, which is very cool. But on the other hand, you don't have flexibility in choosing your workplace. One more thing that impressed me in London is that in modern areas next to huge skyscrapers, you will find a lot of parks and green spaces where people can relax, sit on the benches, have their lunch, walk their dogs, read books, and so on. And you don't get the impression that the city is urban or heartless, but on the contrary, it looks very people friendly and cozy. But I was shocked to learn that in modern districts of London, they have huge problems with safety and security. And as a tourist, I would never be able to guess that because when you are in a new area, everything appears so clean and so perfect. But in reality, those districts might be dangerous, especially at night. As my cousin explained to me, part of the housing in modern districts is given to low income individuals. And it's done not to separate low income individuals from others and to prevent them from building their own communities and their own areas. However, very often those people belong to different gangs and groups which fight with each other, and as the result, these fights happen in modern areas of London. But despite this fact, London is still a very clean and pleasant city. For example, if we compare it with New York, I'd say that New York is much, much dirtier, and there are more, for example, homeless people sitting on the streets and begging for money. And there are definitely, in New York, I mean, more individuals who seem crazy and mentally unstable. And there are more groups of people who look really suspicious. So, additionally, I would say the underground in London is neat and well maintained, while in New York, some subway stations look really terrible. If you ask me to describe London in one word, I'd say that it's very colorful. We arrived there at the beginning of February, and I was expecting to see something similar to Poland, where everything at this time is completely gray. So we have now gray sky, gray grass, gray trees, gray buildings, and so on. But I was shocked that in London, it's already like proper spring with temperatures plus 11 plus 13 degrees, and the grass in parks is so bright and green and colorful. And it seems to me that I have never even seen this kind of grass in my life. And also, flowers and trees are already blooming, and birds are singing like it's spring. So, the climate there in London is definitely much warmer than we have in Poland or in Gdańsk in particular. But I called London colorful not only because of spring. I also noticed that the city itself has many colorful elements. For example, red buses and telephone booths. So, whole buildings or separate doors are brightly painted in blue, orange, pink, yellow, and so on. And all posters, all billboards, and fences covering the constructions of some buildings are unbelievably bright and vivid. And thanks to that, even on rainy days, the city doesn't look as depressing as Gdańsk, for example. So basically, that's it about my trip to London. So if you have any questions, you can send me a message on Instagram and I'll try to help you. And also, if you're interested in how much money we spent in 5 days, I also invite you to check out my Instagram because I've recently posted some reels with this information. And I hope that my next trip to the UK will be in July. But this time, I will go to a small town located next to the sea. So stay tuned and follow me on social media to stay updated about my adventures. And of course, follow this podcast if you would like to boost your English skills. Thank you so much, guys, for listening to this episode. I really appreciate your time. Keep in touch and have a wonderful day. And I'll talk to you next week. Bye bye.